Ladies and gentlemen, we are proud to welcome to the Dangerous Ones, Congressman Mark Pocan from Wisconsin's 2nd District. Congressman, hello.
Hi, glad to be with you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining.
We wanted to start with democratic messaging, something we talk a lot about on this show. And we were all at the DNC last year in Chicago. It was electric. We all flew home. I was convinced we were going to win. And then we didn't. And it felt like 2016 all over again. Democrats have better ideas and a more inclusive vision for the country, but it's clearly not breaking through. Why isn't democratic messaging working? And more importantly, what can the party do right now to fix it before it's too late?
Well, I think November and now are different. So, November, I think a dozen other countries that were like us around the world, whoever was the ruling party got thrown out because we had inflation coming out of COVID. Everything opened up at once, and we still had it in a few lingering areas. And half the people in exit polls said they voted for the economy, right? So that was something that was clearly wrong. Of course, right now, the number one thing working against Donald Trump is the economy. So we know that also is still something that he's dealing with. I think the situation now is just trying to break through, the flooding of the zone that Donald Trump has done, and the media grabs every single shiny lure on of subjects when, their holy grail is this tax cut bill. It's a tax break for Elon Musk and Donald Trump and everyone who can afford to belong to Mar-a-Lago. And when you poll the bill, the fact that you're going to cut healthcare from 16 million people, cut food assistance from 11 million people, cut education funding, add trillions to the debt, and then, give crumbs to most of us in any kind of support. People don't like it. And in fact, it's lopsided by 20 or 30 points, depending on the polling you look at. So we've got something great to talk about right now. Now, the problem is Donald Trump is a master at deflection, and he's got us talking about those 3 square blocks in LA that had some issues, making you think of the state of California is on fire. And I've seen that same car burn about 100 times on TV. That car's really got a lot of life.
Yep.
But that's the problem, is they want to talk about that because bluntly, he polls significantly better on that than we do. We got to figure out a little bit better how we talk about the border. But every time he distracts us from talking about what he's really doing, which is pickpocketing us to give Elon Musk and himself money, we got a problem. So we have the good issue. We just have to figure out how to break through the flooding of the zone.
And Congressman, I consider myself a progressive, a liberal, and I know you were the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus from 2017 to 2021. What do you say to these people who argue that, the party's become too progressive? What do you say to those people?
Yeah, honestly, that's coming out of D.C. from some special interests that don't like what progressives stand for, which is people. The special interests want to keep special interesting. 15,000 lobbyists for a reason in D.C. And, so a lot of these groups that get behind candidates and have these paid super PACs are out there to make sure that those special interests continue to do well. And they're saying, oh, look, it's progressives that are the problem. Actually, people agree with progressives on healthcare and on tax policy and on the environment and on education funding. Go down the list. So, it's really, more certain types of people that kind of benefit from the structure and the special interest infrastructure of DC that are the ones putting that messaging out. But it's certainly not real people in Wisconsin. It's certainly not real people across the country. But this is a message they would love to have you believe, because that way, those poor pharmaceutical companies, they're just trying to rub a couple nickels together.
Gosh darn it.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the problem.
And how?
So you mentioned the Trump's big, beautiful budget bill, which it's actually a flaming pile of shit. It's a dumpster fire, and use all the money going to the billionaires and stealing our healthcare and all these things.
Yeah,
it's terrible. What's the status of the bill currently, so that everybody can be aware?
Yeah.
Where should their attention be focused in terms of advocacy, and what should they be doing?
All federal Republican lawmakers, bluntly, because the House passed the bill. And not only did they all those things I talked about, there's also a $500 billion cut to Medicare in there. I mean, how many times do they tell you they won't cut Medicare, and then they found a $500 billion ways to do it, right? All of that is a vote that everyone but three Republicans in the House voted for. So they got to live with that going into next year's elections.
Good luck.
The House,
Yeah.
the Senate right now is crafting their bill. Maybe by July 4th, they'll have it done. And then they'll have to take the two versions and have a reconciliation process to have one final bill and see if they can get that past all of the Republicans in the House and the Senate. But with their tight margins and the awful ideas, there's not going to be a Democratic vote for this thing. So, they've got to kind of figure out the infighting that they have. But everything we call on, I basically wake up to bad choices and worse choices every single day. I'm all for bad choices. Bad choices are stopping the stealing of healthcare and food from kids and education funding. And if they're going to get the tax bill done, which they did last time just by throwing it on the national debt, I'm guessing that is a path or at least a partial path forward for them. But I don't want to take it from the 55% of seniors in Wisconsin who live in nursing homes or the
Right.
one out of three kids on Medicaid in Wisconsin who get their health insurance from that. That's just cruel.
Yeah.
And if I may, what do you suggest everyday Americans do? What does our listening audience do to fight back against this?
Well, first of all, I mean, I'm so much like most of my constituents in that I'm pissed some days, I'm sad some days, I'm scared some days. I share the same emotions. The one thing we can all do, though, are three things. One, support any of the groups doing litigation right now. There's over 250 lawsuits, but we've had positive adjudications in 184 of them already, and the Trump administration has caved. He is truly the caver in chief. He takes a couple high-profile things and continues to find ways to put them out still legally. But, that's where we're winning is in the courts. Our founders did a good job with checks and balances. So support litigation. Two, help us on communication. It's not misinformation, it's disinformation that they're putting out there. So we need to use our social media to get the real information out. That's why I started a podcast this year with Liberty and Justice for Some to try to get, that message out there in a little longer form. And then third are the elections next year. So, we need people to contact their reps, call them every week, reach out to everyone. We all get those numbers, put that pressure on. But also when there's that No Kings rally, 5 million people across the country joined us. If we can keep cranking those numbers up at these types of rallies, I was in Dodgeville, Wisconsin at a rally. There's 3,500 people in Dodgeville. We had 400 to 500 people at that rally. When you start doing that in these small communities, that's way better than the 15,000 I had in Madison, bluntly. In 400 people in Sauk City in Wisconsin, 300 or 400 in Baraboo, Wisconsin, all just outside of Madison. So just take that pissed offedness and put it to action, right? Support the groups doing litigation, fight the disinformation, and get ready for that next election cycle so that, people who think it's a good idea to cut your Medicare can do it from the private sector because they won't be in the public sector anymore.
Fantastic. And speaking of No King's Day.
I was going to say, speaking of getting in good trouble, we now know that No King's Day was one of the largest single-day protest in American history. So kudos to everybody for showing up.
That, yes.
With more actions coming, like the Good Trouble Lives On protest that's coming up on July 17th, which is on the anniversary of Congressman John Lewis's passing. It feels like to us out here, American voters, that something is shifting in the American political zeitgeist. Would you agree with your point of view, with who you work with and your constituents? Do you feel that there is a shift happening here?
Well, I've always believed in the saying, and I actually printed it on a bumper sticker a couple cycles ago. If the people lead, eventually the leaders will follow. And there's no question that's what's going on right now. That election in Wisconsin for the Supreme Court in April, the message was not that we elected a great new Supreme Court justice or that we won by 10 points in a state where people that usually win by 1 point because we're so purple. The real story was the turnout. People were so pissed about Republicans not doing town halls and they felt like they're not being heard that they came out to vote. And not only did we surpass the normal spring turnout, we even surpassed the level from 2 years ago when we flipped the court. We had mid-level congressional election turnout, in Wisconsin. And that was the message. So in other specials too, we saw this over turnout by Democrats and independents. And I think that's what you're going to see next year. If they keep this up and the Republicans in Congress, think Trump is a king and that they're not going to stand up to, constitutional authorities that we have, people are going to say, well, then fine, I'm going to put people who will stand up in these jobs. And if you won by 10 points or less your congressional seat in the last election, you either better figure out how to listen to your constituents, or you better get a discount card at Costco so you can buy Depends by the cart, because you're going to need them.
We're born with 2 ears and one mouth for a reason, right?
And speaking of town halls, Congressman, we had Senator Ron Wyden join us in studio. Now, here in Oregon, Senator Wyden is a legend when it comes to town halls. He's done over 1,100 of them, and so it's huge for him. And we also know it is for you. How have the town halls been going for you? And also, what do you say about the Republicans are now telling their members, I believe, to not even hold town halls? How do you respond to that?
So the town halls we do in district are all having record turnout. My smallest communities are having, 3 times, 4 times what they normally have in turnout. So that's great. People want to be heard. But I've done 4 town halls now, 1 just outside of, 3 directly in Representative Derek Van Orden's district in Wisconsin. He's got Western Wisconsin. He's the guy who was a January 6th insurrectionist on the Capitol grounds who got elected to Congress, and he has never, ever had an in-person public town hall. He's a former Navy SEAL, but he's scared as shit about everything, especially his constituents. And so I've helped him out by doing town halls in his district. And again, Viroqua, Wisconsin, 4,500 people. We had 400 to 500 people show up for a theater style, inside of a theater, town hall, because they wanted to be heard. And I've done them in La Crosse and Eau Claire and outside Platteville. And I'm going to keep doing them in his district because honestly, it's instead of the he said, she said, this number, that number, it's Wisconsin common sense. Does it pass the smell test? If you're saying this is a great bill, but you're afraid to talk about it, you should want to go on the rooftop and scream about it if it's really as good as you say. But if you're hiding in your basement, I'm guessing people are going to start to smell the bullshit that they're putting out there with their legislation. So that's the real test that I have, is I want to prove them to be hypocrites and liars and chicken shits and everything else that they are right now. And I'm going to keep doing that. The good news is there's now 20 or 30 members doing that. And I would love us to get to the point that we get in 1 week, 50 town halls in Republican districts that people are doing for the Republican members who are just too afraid to get out there and talk to their constituents.
I love that he's going outside the district. Yep. I mean, that's choice right there.
It is.
That's choice. Switching gears a little bit, Tiffany, I know you had another one.
I did. I want to talk about kind of the uptick in targeted political violence that we are having. Senator Tammy Baldwin, Representative Gwen Moore, and your name were found in the subsequent documents of the man who murdered Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark, and attacked Minnesota Senator John Hoffman and his wife, Yvette. It's actually heartbreaking because the two families know each other and their daughters go to school together.
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah.
It's heartbreaking. Somehow the burden is always on Democrats to lower the temperature, but it's us that are out there being attacked. So what should Americans be demanding from Republican leadership here? How do we demand from them that they turn the temperature down?
Well, I mean, it starts at the very top, right?
Yeah.
Donald Trump is the guy who has the most divisive rhetoric. He's the one who, calls people out as subhuman. He's the one who really, riles this up. And he's the one who pardoned the January 6th actual insurrectionists, saying, it's okay if you do this kind of stuff, because, this is a fight for whatever, when really for Donald Trump, it's a fight for his bank account, right? I mean,
right.
This guy's number one goal is always going to be him and his family's personal finances, but nonetheless, so really it has to start there. But, we do need to have a different rhetoric because you can disagree without being disagreeable. And, the Republicans right now have kind of tried to shift this to saying it's, pro-Palestinian, peace protesters. yes, they'll interrupt some events that Republicans and Democrats are at because they're looking at what they consider to be a genocide in Gaza, and because of that, they're outspoken, but they're not taking it that that next level, right? So
Right.
we need to just say you can disagree with someone, and you have a chance to unelect them. That's the strongest thing you can do if you really want to be heard. But to take it to a level of any kind of political violence is just too far. And I know, at least I was told by someone who talked to a very senior Democratic U.S. senator, that there were at least 4 Republican senators who would have voted against some of the nominees, had it not been for, not that they got threats, but that their family members got threats.
Oh my
And
God.
that's why this is just, unfortunately, the byproduct of the Trump style of politics. And I think, from the very top, where he's got the biggest megaphone, it really has to stop.
Very, very scary stuff.
Mhm.
And
Very
and
mafia tactics.
yeah,
you
it's
know?
very difficult when the president of the United States is leading that fire.
I can't even believe this is what we're talking about.
Yeah. Switching gears again to unions.
Yeah.
Nick, I know you had a question.
From division to unity, right? So I know, Congressman, that you are a big labor guy. You're the co-founder and co-chair of the Congressional Labor Caucus. The Trump administration and their billionaire backers are doing everything that they can to kill the labor movement. What do people need to be aware of, and what do we all need to be doing to have the back of the labor movement? Because the labor movement's more popular than it's ever been, but the attacks are coming fast and furious.
Yeah, so you're right. And the good news is people support people having a voice in their workplace, right? Not just about pay and benefit, but it's safety conditions and other things that, you should be able to go to work and have reasonable confidence you're coming home at the end of the day. And that doesn't always happen in all professions and all jobs in America. So I think the real message, and it goes even broader than labor, just to working people in general, is Donald Trump is not your friend. He found this small tax break for overtime pay, but it still has a bunch of asterisks. Not everyone can access it. You still got to pay your FICA taxes, all this other stuff. Between that and the tax on tips, a small senior deduction, and on your interest on autos, all of those tax breaks that supposedly help real people add up to less than 5% of his whole tax bill, right? So at the end of the day, he may be stealing a buck from your pocket, but he's only putting a nickel back in, right? And the rest goes to him and Elon Musk. So we got to remember, he's not your friend. And when they're dismantling things like the National Labor Relations Board that allows people then to form a union once they've decided to do so and have followed the law to do it, they deserve to have a right to be heard. And if you dismantle those agencies, which is what the Trump administration is doing, then you've effectively stopped people from being able to have that collective voice through a union. So it's looking at what he's actually doing, both in stealing from our wallets to give to the wealthiest, but also taking away those agencies that have the goalie in place for us, that have those protections for workers. If he's not doing any of that, then he's really not for you, and you should really stand up and have people who are fighting for you in office instead.
I agree. I'm a vested Teamster, and I couldn't. I was never more proud of my president than when he joined the picket line, and that was
Biden.
just
Biden.
Yeah. And obviously,
well, I just wanted to clarify.
It wasn't Trump, and so that meant a lot to me.
He might have found the Chick-fil-A line.
Yeah. True that. Can I get you to comment on the current Israel-Iran situation that's going on? What is your take on what's going on and Trump's response?
Yeah, I'll tell you. I mean, you have to almost go a step back. And Benjamin Netanyahu is being charged by the international courts as a war criminal. And I believe he should have to speak for those crimes. And he doesn't speak for the Israeli people, in my opinion. He's certainly not speaking for the Palestinian people. But watching what he's done, I mean, Gaza has been an open-air prison for decades, and many of us look the other way. I've tried twice to get into Gaza when I was there in the Middle East and been denied. I finally had gotten permission the month before October 7th to go in between Halloween and the end of January. Would have been the first person in 10 years from Congress to actually get a chance to get in. And, the conditions have always been awful there, largely because of how Israel's government had decided to set up the so-called protections there. What happened on the 7th was devastating, but it's been taken advantage of. And now it does appear to be, to many, to be a genocide of the people in Gaza. When you're, taking out almost every building and structure in Gaza, you keep moving people and displacing them. And then this is another step. They see Iran as one of the funders of Hamas that did the attack on the 7th, not Palestinians in particular. It was Hamas, a subset of that population. And because of that, now I think, we've heard this refrain from him in the past that they've almost got a nuclear weapon. And it's never been true. And I guess, Tulsi Gabbard said it's not true. And the president's now ignoring his own intelligence people on this because, there seems to be this Israel's always right attitude. Look, I think this is disrespectful to the people of Israel and Palestine. This is Benjamin Netanyahu, their own version of Donald Trump, that's doing this stuff. And as long as he does this, he's staying out of jail because he's got some pending charges against him. And, unfortunately, tens of thousands of people have lost their lives. Millions have been displaced. And now they're adding this into another country and broadening a conflict. And I don't want to ever have to send young American men and women into battle for something that's not America's cause. And right now, I'm not seeing this as a real cause.
Well, either way you look at it, boy, it's sure those images coming out on both sides, coming out is just terrible stuff. It's terrible. And finally, Congressman, the great thing about having members of Congress on this show is we get to learn about the many districts that make up this great nation. And so can you tell us a little bit about Wisconsin's 2nd District? What makes it special? Basically, we're giving you an opportunity to brag about your district. Yeah. What are some of the achievements and what are some of the challenges in your district?
So the main city is Madison, Wisconsin, with a world-class university, University of Wisconsin-Madison. We do a lot of research, and I think we create something like 55% of the job growth for the entire state comes out of one county, Dane County, that Madison's in. So, we got one county that's doing a lot of great things in the state. And then I got a lot of ruralness too. I mean, outside of Madison, the rest of Dane County, our agricultural output is bigger than 12 states' agricultural output. Then you take in my other counties. I got one county so rural. Out of 72 counties in Wisconsin, there are only 2 that don't have a stop and go light. And one is Lafayette County in my district. Wow. The growing population is Amish. All right.
Wow.
So I have got from the most rural aspects of the state to, the hotbed of scientific research and education and job creation. So I've got a little bit of everything. And, it's just a beautiful part of the state. And, people are very, Midwest nice. We are a little passive aggressive, I'll admit at times, but we're still Midwest nice. And, I'm very proud to be from here and live here and plan to continue to be.
Well, sir, I'm a fellow Wisconsinite, born in Eau Claire. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I was just up there doing a town hall for Derek Van Orden a couple weeks ago.
How generous.
Well, sir, we can't thank you enough for joining us today on the show. Truly, from the bottom of our hearts, it means a lot. And please come back on anytime.
Yeah, no, thank you all. I appreciate it. And just one last plug with Liberty and Justice for Some is the podcast. I am truly, I'm not one of the rich folks in Congress. I'm not one of the lawyers in Congress. I'm about as average as you can get in every way. And I'm actually extremely happy about that. So I really do represent my constituents. And I like to have conversations about things that I and others care about. And it's not always what people talk about in Washington, but we have some good conversations on there just like you do, and I hope people will give it a listen.
We encourage all of our listeners to go subscribe right now. I'm sure it's on Apple, Spotify, the whole 9 yards.
That's what I'm told.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
Go find that podcast and subscribe right now. In fact, we'll put a link in the description of this video. Sir, thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.